Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Here I am using the iPhone 8 in 2025 and see if it is still usable and worth it in 2025. I received the iPhone 8 in September free of charge from my swimming teacher who worked for me years ago. It was still linked to their Apple account and had Find My turned on. Fortunately, I returned to them to reset. Although they didn't factory reset, they did remove the phone from Find My, so when it returned to me, I erased all content from the iPhone using Legacy iOS Kit, which doesn't update iOS unlike iTunes, and after erasing the iPhone, it didn't ask for activation lock, so here I am. Let's walk along the history of the iPhone 8. The iPhone 8 was announced alongside the iPhone X and larger sibling iPhone 8 Plus on September 12, 2017, and released on September 27, 2017 for $699 or £699 for base 64GB model, with 256GB model costing $150 or £150. It initially came in 3 colors: silver, space gray, and gold, with the product red color introduced on April 9, 2018. The price was eventually lowered to $599 and $449 in September 2018 and September 2019, respectively. It was discontinued with the launch of iPhone SE second generation on April 15, 2020, retaining the iPhone 8 design. The iPhone 8 has a refined design over the predecessor, with a glass back instead of aluminum, allowing for wireless charging. The iPhone 8 also has volume buttons and ring silent switch, and at the right, it has a power button and a SIM card tray. At the bottom, there are stereo speakers and a lightning port that supports fast charging using an 18-watt charger up to 50% in 30 minutes, which is the first for an iPhone. At the front, there is a 7-megapixel front camera, an earpiece and a microphone above the screen, and a home button below the screen that vibrates when pressed. At the back, there is a 12-megapixel camera with flash and another microphone.
So I am going to boot up the iPhone 8. As you can see, it only takes 15 seconds, which is really quick. After it is booted into the setup screen, time to set the iPhone 8 up. Just like setting up my iPhone 6s in my previous video, I proceeded by choosing a language and region, which in this case is English and the United Kingdom, respectively. Next, I chose the preferred Wi-Fi network and I am waiting for the phone to activate. Fortunately, this iPhone doesn't have activation lock after resetting the phone. I set up the default data and privacy settings and skipped Touch ID and passcode for now. I went to set it up as a new device. As expected, logging to my Apple ID on this iPhone is flawless. I entered my email address and password, and I had to enter the verification code to make sure it is mine. I agreed to the terms and conditions, and I went through the relevant pages, such as data and privacy, set up as new iPhone. When the setup is finished by finally pressing the Get Started button, I am greeted with the iOS 16 home screen. The iPhone 8 features the same display size and resolution as iPhone 7, 6s, and 6, with a 4.7-inch Retina HD display with a resolution of 1334 by 750 pixels, accounting for a 326 pixel per inch pixel density. Compared to Android flagship or even mid-range phones of 2017, such as Samsung Galaxy S8 and A7 2017, which had sharper Full HD 1080p and even Quad HD 1440p displays,
iPhone 6s can appear fairly pixelated when viewed very close, but it is sufficiently sharp when viewing from an average viewing distance. This display is IPS, which doesn't have the vivid colors or deep blacks of AMOLED found in Samsung phones or OLED in iPhone X, but it isn't too bad. The iPhone 8's display is pressure sensitive, allowing for 3D touch features, as well as being the first iPhone to feature a true tone display, which automatically adapts the color temperature to the surroundings.
This iPhone 8 currently runs iOS 16.3.1. iPhone 8 first launched with iOS 11 and received iOS 12, which improved performance, and iOS 13, which introduced dark mode, and iOS 14, which introduced widgets on home screen, and iOS 15, which introduced focus mode, and iOS 16, which redesigned the lock screen to be customizable. The iPhone 8 still receives security updates, with the most recent being iOS 16.7.12, released in September. But I won't update to that version because I plan to jailbreak it with dopamine. iOS 17 dropped support for this iPhone, as well as iPhone X, and iOS 16 is 3 versions behind the current release, iOS 26.
The iPhone 8 at launch had 64 or 256 gigabytes of storage, which I have the former configuration. In September 2018, the higher-end 256 gigabyte option was replaced by 128 gigabyte option. Almost 8 gigabytes of storage is used by the operating system, with a few more gigabytes used as system data. Regarding the battery, iPhone 8 has a 1821 mAh non-removable battery, which is a downgrade from 1960 mAh in the predecessor, iPhone 7. My iPhone 8 I have has 86% battery health, which is still fine. It also supports 18-watt wired fast charging, which can charge an iPhone 8 to 50% in only 30 minutes. Additionally, it also supports key wireless charging at 5 watts, which is the first iPhone to do so.
Let's talk about iOS 16 and the app compatibility. So, as I mentioned, iOS 16, which is the last version of iOS it can run on iPhone 8, is 3 generations behind iOS 26, meaning the app support is fading away and away. But right now, surprisingly, lots of apps are still compatible, including most Google apps, such as Google, Gemini, and YouTube, Meta apps, such as Facebook and Instagram, and most games. Anyways, if the app requires a higher iOS version and is already installed in a newer iOS device, this might give a prompt to install an older compatible version of that app. I have downloaded a good bunch of apps and games from the App Store, including Google Apps, Discord, Canva, and others, as well as a decent variety of games.
I am testing third-party apps on my iPhone 8. Firstly, here is the Google app, which the latest version is still compatible with iOS 16. Google still works perfectly in the latest version. Next up is Chrome, which requires iOS 17 or later for the most recent version, but I installed the older iOS 16 compatible version of Chrome, and it still works for browsing websites. Next up is Google Workspace apps, which, although some no longer support iOS 16 and latest versions, still work in older versions. Gemini is still compatible with iOS 16. As for YouTube, the YouTube and YouTube Studio fully supports iOS 16. If you have enjoyed this video so far, please like my video and subscribe to my channel. This helps my channel so much. As for the other third-party apps, Discord still works in 2025 and is still supported on iOS 16. Much like Discord on iOS 15, 12, and even 10, I can send messages and polls, access servers, and much more. The last third-party app I tested is Canva, which is still also supported on iOS 16. Like Discord, I can create designs on that app. Most games are still supported on iOS 16, so I am testing some games on the iPhone 8. This includes the post-popular games as well as classic games. The specific games I am testing are Candy Crush Saga, Hill Climb Racing, Subway Surfers, Temple Run, and Crossy Road, which all work very well without significant lag. The iPhone 8 is powered by Apple A11 Bionic, which is a 6-core, 10-nanometer processor with 2 performance Monsoon cores running at 2.39 GHz and 4 efficient Mistral cores running at 1.42 GHz. For the first time, all 6 cores on Apple A11 Bionic now run simultaneously, greatly improving multi-core performance compared to the predecessor A10 Fusion, which only runs 1 cluster of 2 cores at once. It integrates an M11 Motion coprocessor and a tri-core Apple-designed GPU, as well as a dual-core Neural Engine NPU, the first on an iPhone, capable of 600 gigaflops, hence why it is called A11 Bionic. It is paired with 2 GB of RAM, while the Plus model has 3 GB. Let's run the benchmarks of the iPhone 8. As you can see in the Geekbench 6 benchmark, the iPhone 8 scored 1,080 for single-core and 1,995 for multi-core, which was definitely a big leap from the predecessor, iPhone 7, especially in multi-core performance. I also ran the Antutu V10 benchmark, and it scored around 468,000 points, and in the web-based Speedometer 2.1, it scored 139 points. These benchmarks are comparable to a 2025 entry-level phone, like the Samsung Galaxy A17 5G, though the web-based benchmarks are closer to today's mid-range phones. I also tested the real-world performance of iPhone 8 with apps, and it is not actually bad for an 8-year-old smartphone.
What about the camera of the iPhone 8? The iPhone 8 features an improved 12-megapixel rear camera with 1.8 f-number aperture. For the first time in an iPhone, it supports 4K video recording at 60 frames per second, as well as 1080p 240 frame per second slow-mo. As for the front camera, the resolution is 7 megapixels and is capable of recording 1080p 30 frames per second. Only the Plus variant of 8 has an additional 12-megapixel telephoto camera capable of 2 times optical zoom. Let's talk about the camera quality of the iPhone 8. As you can see, compared to a 2025 mid-range phone like Samsung Galaxy A35 5G, the photos and videos taken on the iPhone 6s are not too bad. This wraps up this video. iPhone 8 costs £45 to £60 in the United Kingdom, $80 to $110 in the United States, and 9,000 to 12,000 rupees in India. So, is the iPhone 8 still usable in 2025? Yes, the iPhone 8 is still fairly usable for most tasks right now. You can still access social media apps as well as YouTube and most games. It also still receives security updates for this iPhone for the foreseeable future. So, is it still worth it in 2025? This iPhone 8 is no longer worth it in 2025 as a primary phone due to the outdated iOS version, which is 3 generations behind, and therefore app compatibility, which some apps are requiring iOS 17, 18, or later. However, it can still be worth it in 2025 as a secondary or backup phone because it is inexpensive and still supports many apps. If you are looking for a cheap iPhone to use as a daily driver, iPhone SE2, which runs the latest iOS 26, is a great choice for slightly more money at around £50 to £65 in the UK, $80 to $110 in the USA, and 9,000 to 13,000 rupees in India, used for a 64GB model. So, if you have enjoyed watching the video, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment if you still have an iPhone 8.